Welcome to the Mythic Movie Maker podcast, where we analyze movies from a mythological perspective. My name is John, and this is my brother Nick.
Hello.
So, Nick, we're doing something a little bit different today.
Yeah, we're mixing it up a little bit. We're kind of doing a year in review type thing
Yeah,
for the year of 2024.
they are a strange collection of movies, but I think they're movies that I think they have the most interesting mythological themes of any of the movies this year.
Yeah.
And also do something else, which I don't really see anybody else do, which is kind of talk about what all the movies, and this is something I always think about every Oscar season, is what what themes collectively do all the movies sort of share? And
Hmm.
what does that sort of say about the times that we live in? And so that's why I'm calling these episodes, maybe we'll do it every year, The Spirit of the Times. So the movies are, Nick, well, there were going to be more of them, but one of them is still in theaters, and we don't like going to the theaters, I guess.
That's
So the movies
basically,
are, but what's that?
basically, yeah.
So the movies are, and we can do it in any order that you want too, Nick. I don't have any particular. That's the mythological way, after all. The Bikeriders, Twisters, The Return. So those are our movies that we're going to discuss. And Nick, is there a quote that you have?
Oh, it did not occur to me uh to grab a quote.
Well, do you mind if
You may.
I okay. It's actually from the movie that we didn't watch.
Oh,
Um, the times they are a changing. You know that?
yeah.
That's from the Bob Dylan movie.
Might leave my apartment to go watch this one. Uh, out of shame.
You're all Nosferatu'd up there, uh, in your apartment. All right. Well, Nick, what was your process? How long did it take you to watch all these movies?
Basically, I watch like one per day off. Generally, like the early morning is when I'm most productive. I'll just wake up in the morning and then get my coffee, and then first thing in the morning just watch the movie.
I actually watched them all at night. Yeah, it was fun. It was pretty fun to like be
Yeah, yeah,
tasked with watching movies like a job.
yeah. It's like having homework that you want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So, were there any common themes? Did you like the movies? Tell me your sort of general gestalt.
Twisters was entertaining. I wouldn't. It's not the kind of movie that I'm going to think back on frequently.
Hmm.
Bike Riders was very good. I liked Bike Riders a lot. The Return also,
The Return
although
was a
that's
beautiful movie.
the return was great. It was well done. But I think the reason why I liked it so much is that it's the way it relates to the source material. That it takes this like very small part of the story that should be the most emotional part and it's kind of like glazed over in the original.
Yeah, because there's no islands, there's no monsters. It's just a very quiet, and he's not Odysseus for most of it either. Well, let's get into that one then.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
'Cause
yeah. Like
He's
this was
he's hiding who he is from for all of it. So it is very funny that like it's a movie about a hero where he's not a hero.
well. It's also it's fun because it's kind of taking a modern conception of war and kind of like grafting it onto like a heroic story. Like in the original and a lot of these Greek myths, like these heroic characters are like larger than life, and they're incredibly ambitious, and they do things, and they're just incredible, and they're amazing, and everyone loves them. But like this is kind of like a war is hell type type
Hmm.
story, where when he's kind of like thinking back on the war, he seems extremely traumatized by the process of winning this war.
Yeah. The war played a huge part of it, interestingly, more so than the source material than his journey that he went on for 10 years after the war. That he
Yeah,
his most that happened most recently to him, the war was more on his mind. And why is that? Like he's kind of like reminding me a bit of a Vietnam vet coming home.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's some parallels to that. Like he despite his heroics, he's kind of mistreated. Like after he gets back, like, oh, old soldier, what are you doing here? You know.
Yeah. Well, they didn't believe him that he was even there. Some of them. It was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they all say, looking for some food, begging.
Mm-hmm. Although he does prove himself against one of the thugs. They eventually believe he's a soldier, but still kind of mistreat and look down on him.
It enraged me, Like that
Yeah,
enraged me. This guy who went out and fought, risked his life for something, you know,
something
um,
trivial, to be
well,
honest.
well, I hope they make, well, yeah, but I think the point, I think that's the point of that story is that it was something based on something so trivial.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like it's like that's the whole point of what that's like a common point in a lot of like war is hell type stories, which is like
mhm,
why is this even happening? This is like the original reasons for going to war were so not worth all of this horror.
mhm. The point is that what made me mad was the fact that these useless people that didn't go to war and didn't suffer at all and didn't do anything in their lives except mooch, they're the ones that are in power
Yeah,
in the town. And that's just so unfair. They act with some such pomposity as well.
yeah, yeah. So like all of the real men went off to war,
Exactly. Yeah, that's what
and
it
that and
is.
yeah, and so now like these people who are fundamentally like cowards
Hmm.
are the only people who are kind of strong and vigorous and are just and have an incredible amount of power because of that. They're kind of play acting as being real men
Yeah.
in the absence of the actual people who are brave and upstanding.
One of the quotes was, "To some, the war was home." So he's actually the whole Odyssey, maybe, was him shedding all the horrors of war that he was saw and did while he was there. You
Yeah.
know, like if you go, if you he went and he didn't even he didn't exactly just sacrifice his life. He killed people. He sacrificed his morality too for the
Mm-hmm.
war. And he did terrible things. Like, remember when he said that he was dressed up as a spy and went into Troy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
looked in the eyes of all the people that he was going to kill, and like, I think this whole movie that had been haunting him.
Yeah. So especially like when because when you think of like the Greeks like coming out of the Trojan horse and sort of overpowering the Trojan defenders, like you think of this as like this really like almost like a big prank. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that clever fox Odysseus, he pulled one over on the Trojans. And then but then when you actually like think about this in terms of like the the on the ground human experience of this, they were inside the city killing unaware, like essentially unaware, unsuspecting people who thought the war was over.
Yeah, you're right.
This like really this awful, horrible sneak attack that resulted in the deaths of many innocent civilians.
Hmm.
All for Agamemnon's pride, basically.
He must subscribe to Sherman's philosophy on war.
Make Troy howl.
Yeah. Well, he well, the other one. War is hell, so end it quickly,
Oh yeah.
you know. That was his whole thing is like it's gonna either gonna be really bad for a little bit or just bad for a long time. Which one would you rather have, you know?
Mhm.
Well, and Odysseus is a patriot too. Like, do you think he believes in the war? He must not, to a certain degree. I mean, not even Achilles did.
Well, I think he believed in like the concept of like glory through combat.
Mm,
Like I think the
not
uh
anymore.
not anymore. Yeah. Yeah, the idea of like, oh, great men go to war and prove themselves and prove their honor and show that they're heroic.
Yeah.
And then he actually goes to war and is yeah,
Sees
sees
the
the truth of
reality
it.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, so one of the things about why I think, because like for a mythological podcast, this is like bread and butter, right? It's
Yeah, this is
it's like a premium myth in human history. It's like probably the
yeah,
top myth in the Western world. So,
possibly. Yeah, probably.
but what's interesting is, I've read the book and I've seen some movies on it, but even still, and I've heard people talk about it and have their theories on it and everything, but even still, watching this movie, I got a completely new perspective on a lot of the ideas of it that I'd never even thought of before.
Like the Iliad is a lot more like glorious combat kind of thing. The
Hmm.
Odyssey is almost like I hesitate to call it a comedy travelogue, but it is there is that aspect of it of like, oh, we go to a new place and we encounter some wacky magical thing that's happening and then we handle it and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it is a lot lighter
Yeah,
than
like, oh,
the Iliad.
yeah, like it doesn't dwell on the incredible body horror of being turned into pigs.
Yeah,
Like that
and it,
sounds incredibly terrifying and dehumanizing. Then also, being eaten by like the danger of being eaten by a cyclops, which some of the men actually were eaten.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and adultery, which they brought up in this movie. I heard that you were on an island with some other woman. You don't want her to know. That's true, and yeah, it is more treated like a fun adventure, even though it's
mhm.
dealing with like, well, what do you think the Odyssey? Why do you think he must go on an Odyssey? Obviously, in the story, it happens to him, but Homer puts him on an Odyssey for a reason.
So I think
But
okay,
yeah.
okay, so there's the historical context, which makes it which is less fun,
Hmm.
but I suspect that if you're telling stories, if you're a storyteller, like you're just that's your profession, like you go to some town and then you tell stories over a campfire for a few nights for free food or whatever, and then you move on to the next town. Like it must be really easy to have your stories divided neatly into little islands
Yeah.
where you can tell a self-contained story about a cyclops or a witch or harpies or whatever.
Well, one of my theories too that goes along with that is I felt like in the books, Homer makes great effort to like name drop all the cities that, of Greece, known
Oh, so
cities.
it's like in hip hop albums where they just start screaming out the name of random
Yeah.
cities.
And someone, I forget who it was, but someone's actually called the Iliad gangster rap, which it basically is. And it's all about like Diomedes, I'm the best, man. I'm gonna come after you. It's so macho. I think what Homer is saying is like, I want to be popular everywhere. So I want to give every people of Greece sort of like something to hold on to with my story so that they feel
Mhm.
involved in the story. And especially because, yeah, you're talking about like the traveling storytellers and stuff. They would probably always like, and then the our guys, you guys, you know.
Yeah.
There's two main questions that I've always had about the Odyssey, and I think
Mhm.
this movie does a good job in answering them. The first is, what the hell is the point of Telemachus? You know, the child.
Mhm.
And then the other is, what the hell is the point of the I mean, I know the story reason for the knitting the funeral shawl, but what's the
Yeah.
meaning of that, you know? They focus so much on it, especially in this movie.
Yeah. Like I do think that for lack of a better word, like gender roles are an important part of the story, especially with Telemachus,
Yeah.
where like he is Odysseus's son. He is, has all the genetics of a great hero,
Hmm.
but Odysseus isn't present to raise him. So there's every reason why he should be able to step up and be the leader of Ithaca, but he just can't. He just doesn't have the chops to do it,
Yeah,
or the
like
bravery.
I was thinking during this, has he ever seen Odysseus? Like, could Odysseus, I mean, certainly not as an adult,
Yeah.
but it might be that like he's around the age that like Odysseus could have like had him and then immediately left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the just the Odyssey is what, 10 years?
Yeah, I think they're both 10 years.
Yeah, the Iliad takes forever too.
Yeah. So he's,
So
you
yeah,
know, he's apparently at least 20 years old.
yeah, yeah. There's the he can't like it, at any rate, he could never have had a real relationship with Odysseus.
Yeah. So he's never seen the ideal heroic man before in his entire life. He doesn't even know
Mm-hmm.
what it is. And I think that's why they don't go over it in the movie. But I think, or maybe they do. Like he goes on an adventure at the very beginning of the book. How long ago was it that you read it?
Oh, forever ago,
Oh, okay. Well,
at least like 10 years ago.
oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In an Odyssey length of time. But he goes at the very beginning of the book, he goes to some land looking for his father because he's looking for his father the whole time. And I think he's looking for a father figure, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but there are none left.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and
All the real men went
yeah.
to Troy. Yeah.
So that's like that's one of the huge untalked about consequences of war is like all the most brave people of a society go away for a long time and die, many of them, and
Mm-hmm.
what that can do to the homeland, you know?
Yeah, and so there is a little bit of shared DNA between this movie and, funnily enough, the Bike Riders,
Yeah.
where like where you have these like these people who are essentially thugs,
Yeah.
which is a person who is very comfortable with violence but not really driven by morality,
You're talking
and
about who in particular?
the suitors
No, in Bike Riders.
and Bike Riders, most of the new arrivals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that, yeah, they're both talking about like the collapse of society almost.
Yeah, where like these this sort of original group of people are strong and brave, comfortable with violence, but sort of turning it towards a more productive end.
Yeah.
And then like contrasting that with these like sort of these sort of antisocial, thuggish people who are kind of very mostly,
Psychopaths.
yeah, mostly concerned with feeling powerful and making sure that their own wants are being met.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's what the suitors are. I saw Ithaca as Odysseus.
Okay.
Like there were a couple things that happened that were a little weird. Like when he first got there, he like ate the land.
Well, I think that I
You
okay. So
know?
yeah, he well, like that's the things like once it was like that's a common trope of like after you're out to sea for a really long time, you finally find land.
It is.
You
No,
kiss
it is. But
kiss the beach. But he
yeah,
really he like puts the beach in his mouth.
yeah. And it wasn't the beach either. It was like the soil. So it
Yeah, it
wasn't
was,
like
yeah,
the sand that gets pushed around by the water. It's like the black soil of Ithaca, you
yeah. Like
know?
he's like literally eating dirt.
And that wasn't the only reference to that either. Oh, the bad guy says, "I will leave my scar on this land," you know. And Odysseus had a scar that was how his mother was able to recognize him.
Oh no, that was like a I think it was like a wet nurse or something.
Oh, you're right. So that would have been, but regardless, you
Well, yeah,
know,
like
there
in
was
a way, like yeah, he's being defined by his scars.
well, but the connection I'm making is they make a very clear point. I will make my scar on this land, and they make a point of showing a scar on Odysseus. So the if the island represents Odysseus as a person, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah. So, like yeah, he's especially like the idea of a soldier coming back from war and having a big scar. Like you immediately think that the scar is associated with combat in some way.
hmm
But the scar is it's not that.
Yeah,
It represents his like a time in his childhood
it represents like his connection
to the island.
to the island. Yeah. And you're right. That is a good like misdirect, which is like you'd think that he would get the scar from, but it actually is much deeper than that. And it shows like the scar shows to that woman who he is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a big point of the movie too, is like self knowledge and authenticity and stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, like that's him knowing who he is kind of an important aspect of the movie where a ton of people are like figure him out. Like you're Odysseus. Why don't you just walk up to the palace and declare yourself?
Why
And
not?
he's
I thought that too.
and the thing is that he's more he has the confidence to not do that. Like
Yeah.
if he was kind of impulsive or too prideful, he would just obviously just present himself to the palace. But he knows in his heart of hearts that he is the king, that he is Odysseus, and that he can take his time. He can
Yeah.
do it the
He's confident. He's confident.
yeah.
And because he knows who he is can never be taken away from him. So why not just take your time and do it the right way? And well, if you want to skip to the end, I think the way that he defeated the suitors was not by some crazy, feat that he learned in war or something or some
It
it
was
was
it was this previous connection that he had to this bow. Yeah,
yes.
he it wasn't that he was so incredibly strong that he could string a an impossibly tough bow. It was that he knew the piece of equipment. He was familiar with it. It was he was coming home.
Hmm. Yeah.
This was his palace and this was his bow.
Yeah, and the way he defeated the suitors was by proving who he is. doing stuff that only he could do and is known by everyone that only he can do it. And that's kind of like everybody, the way that you defeat problems is through your authenticity
Well, yeah, and the suitors were like you could call them inauthentic or
completely.
disloyal or self-serving because they could have easily just rushed him and like overpowered him with sheer numbers,
Hmm.
but they every one of them wanted to look out for themselves. None like they were all hiding behind tables and stuff, and none of them wanted to be the first to run out of the table.
Yeah, you're talking about
And
like they could have actually, if they wanted to team up together and overtake Odysseus while
mhm,
he was shooting them each one by one with a bow,
yeah,
they could have done it, but they were all too self-centered that
yeah, like
they couldn't
they
team
didn't
up.
have they didn't have like the trust in each other or the camaraderie. Like they saw each other as rivals. So when as they were
Yeah,
getting picked off, they were literally pushing the like each other out of cover.
yeah, that's a
I
really
think
good point.
yeah, and the ones that did try to rush him were kind of defeated by Odysseus's I think that farmer that he made friends with and his son.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
all it took was like three people who trusted each other and were loyal to each other to defeat this group of like 20 thugs.
yeah, it was a bit unbelievable. Like that whole part was a bit unbelievable, but I liked it.
Yeah, I thought that was maybe if there was fewer suitors.
Well, the
Maybe if there
suitor,
was
yeah.
if there was like 7 or 8 suitors instead of like 15,
Yeah.
it would have been a slightly more believable scene.
Yeah, but it
But I
wouldn't
think
be as dramatic and mythical.
yeah, and also like well and the an important part of it is to like display like the sheer horrors of war
Hmm.
where like his wife was essentially saying to him, "This is awful. This is terrible. This is a bloodbath. This is I don't want to see this in my house." And Odysseus just knew that this is necessary if you're going to
Yeah.
defeat evil people who enjoy violence. Is to just sort of knuckle down and be a soldier and do the violence,
It's like
get it out of the
Django.
way.
It's like Django again. That movie is so hits it so perfectly. Is like
Mm-hmm.
you have to be the black slave trader sometimes in
Yeah.
life. And there will be people who definitely don't like that. But and I just mean
Yeah.
by that I
It's
just mean a monster. You have to be a
yeah. Like
monster. And you're
like what's happening is horrible.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
truly. But sometimes horrible things are necessary to get rid of even worse things.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's the slow degradation of his island over the course of 20 years has to be reversed. Excised in a way. Like you have to like the process of surgery is
Yeah.
deeply violent and damaging. But
The talking about like excising the suitors, and it's
yeah,
like excising this dark thing which has been allowed to form in
mm-hmm.
and I actually think, if the island is Odysseus, what the suitors represent to me are like the bad impulses of your psychology or things that are sort of like haunting you because like the suitors were like I think like Homer's view of that is like those are the worst type of men. Like
Yeah,
those are a whatever the ideal man is, they're the opposite of that.
yeah. Like it's a type of behavior that's like still distinctly masculine, but in a way that is kind of
Talk
villainous.
toxic.
Yeah, there we go.
Uh but so, I think if you view the movie psychologically as like a psychological metaphor, which,
Hmm.
like everything in this podcast, may or may not be the point. But the suitors represent those bad impulses. And within Odysseus, he must destroy those bad impulses of his that he learned at war, you know,
Hmm.
because, that quote, to some, the war was home. So the war was still haunting him. And those suitors were little impulses that he'd learned, at war that were not good to be at home, you know.
So it's funny, like when I actually do remember that line, and I thought that not that line was a very specific. I don't think that was like I think that line was actually talking about a very specific person.
Oh,
I thought
forgot.
he was I thought he was talking about Achilles.
Ooh, because he
I
died. Yeah, he died
because
there.
yeah, because Achilles is kind of the like he's like if anything the protagonist of the Iliad,
Completely.
and he's kind of this character who is driven by like the only thing he cares about is glory. He wants to be a great warrior in a great war, and he he gets what he wants. Like he gets to be the great hero, and in the final moments of the war that defined him, he dies.
He died a myth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, you can think of Troy as the land of myth. So all the people that died there became
Mm-hmm.
myths. They went from their normal homes like Ithaca, and they went to become part of a myth. And then, some of them died a myth, and some of them had to come back from that mythical land and readjust to being normal again.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's not easy to do. It's a lot
Yeah,
harder to
he's
do than you might think. And it takes a journey to be able to do that.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's it.
yeah.
You're totally right. That's who he's referring to. And that's so cool that they don't even say it. They don't say Achilles in it.
They don't mention like Achilles or Hector or Priam or Ajax or any of the characters in the
Yeah.
Iliad. He just kind of like just thinks of them as fellow soldiers,
Hmm. Well,
like as they're
regarding,
his peers. Yeah.
yeah, even on the other side. And like that's something that's like kind of crazy about the Iliad too is how honorable the enemy was portrayed in it, as opposed to how honorable the enemy was portrayed in the Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
Like like he actually Odysseus loved actually and respected the Trojans
Hmm.
and but he hated the suitors that had moved into his own village.
Yeah.
What does the sewing the funeral shroud mean? It's kind of it's kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of
Yeah. Like the fact that the funeral shroud
is it
it's
for
for it's for
Odysseus grand
it's for
or
it's for
Odysseus's
Odysseus.
father?
Yeah, is Odysseus is father.
To me it goes back to that idea of the ideal.
I think it's also like so the completion of the shroud is essentially like to me very clearly represents like the mourning process for Odysseus. It's like I will find another man when I am done with this shroud.
Hmm.
Like so it's almost
Yeah.
like when I'm done grieving for my husband, then I will marry again.
Yeah.
So I think that's like to me that seems pretty likely.
Yeah, and
And
here's the
you're
thing though. If my friend's husband, if I had like a friend that's a girl, and her husband had died, had not had left for war and was missing 20 years ago. And I would kind of tell her, you got to move on, you know?
Yeah.
You can't be
Yeah.
stuck in this.
Yeah, she's not admitting that he's dead.
Yeah. And she's right to
The
because he's not.
Yeah, because she's like, the act of like tearing apart the shroud is almost like refusing to admit that he died. You know,
Yeah.
I'm undoing the grieving process every night by believing he's still alive.
Yeah. But here's the thing. What if she was just she thought highly of herself and she had such a huge amount of self-respect that she needed a hero that lived up to Odysseus
Well,
to marry her because that's what she
well
was
that
used to.
that's the whole point of the stratagem with the bow
Yeah.
was okay. One of you wants to take his place. Here you go.
Yeah.
Be the man he was.
Exactly. And if somebody, do you think if somebody did prove themselves in that contest, that she would have married him if it wasn't Odysseus?
Probably.
I think she would. I think she would because
Yeah.
Odysseus isn't actually what she was looking for. She
Well,
was,
yeah,
yeah,
it's not just like the individual person of Odysseus, but just the idea of the perfect man.
exactly, exactly. And the, the shroud was not of Odysseus. It wasn't Odysseus's shroud. It was
Yeah.
his father's shroud.
Hmm.
And, his father begat him, and that line was a good line of men.
Hmm.
And the father's shroud represented an ideal man,
Hmm.
that deserves to be king. And she every single night she made it, looked upon it, kind of meditated over the ideal, what an ideal man is, and then tore it apart, because it wasn't there. There wasn't an ideal man left, so she tore it apart because she wasn't ready to marry someone who was less of a king, and
Hmm.
I think that's a lesson, it's a very masculine movie, but I think that's the lesson for, you know, was a lesson for Greek women too, which is like, don't settle for less. Don't marry a suitor. Um,
Yeah.
Marry someone you can be proud to marry and that will do good for you and your children,
Yeah. That seems to be like a lesson of the story is, if you're, find someone who's worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last shot of the movie, we'll do this and then we can move on unless you have. But the last shot of the movie was, do you remember it?
No.
It was
Oh,
Telemachus
yeah.
sailing away from Ithaca.
Oh, okay. I don't even remember that. Yeah, but
I didn't remember it the first time I saw it either.
like,
But
I guess that makes sense because he's like he really couldn't he wasn't allowed to go on his own adventures
mhm,
and to sort of develop the experience that he needed to become a great man because he was stuck at
exactly.
home.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, you need to leave and go out to that mythical place, wherever it is.
mhm.
Yeah, and if Ithaca is Odysseus, you need to leave your parents', realm to make your own man.
Yeah,
And so I
yeah,
thought that was
like
really beautiful.
yeah, like Telemachus in this version of the story is much more his own character
Yeah,
and not just like the family lineage of Odysseus that needs to be protected.
Hmm.
Uh,
He is kind of an annoying character, though. I'll be honest.
he's well, yeah, he that I feel like his flaws are meant to highlight Odysseus's absence,
Hmm.
where
Yeah,
he gives the suitors whatever they want. He doesn't really take leadership of the island in a way that he really should be, and all of this is just because if he was raised by properly raised by his father, he would be the kind of person who wouldn't need his father.
yeah. Um, and the one last thing I'll say is I just really loved the style that the movie was shot. It was so
Yeah, like it's
simple and yeah.
down to earth, very
Yeah.
grimy.
Yeah. Grimy and kind of like empty of any bells and whistles at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really felt like it was a real story with real people until the end. Yeah, and I think it was sort of like, and the movie's called The Return and it's a return in so many different ways, which is
Mm-hmm.
mythological. Like one thing means many things in myths. And the the style of the movie was also kind of a return, which, we're going to get into with later movies, but I feel like Hollywood is in the mood for a return, you know?
Yeah,
And
I think you're right. The
yeah.
the word superhero fatigue has been uh, bandied about for the past 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, and like superheroes have ruined a whole generation from mythology. They're so they're such trash, superficial mythology, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They're masquerading as mythology. But this movie is real mythology, you know? On that theme, let's talk about Twisters, baby.
Twisters.
If you feel it, chase it.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
favorite
Like this
movie of the
is
year.
yeah this was definitely made for the modern era.
It was
There,
conscious
yeah,
of it too.
yeah. Like it's almost like it's very tongue in cheek about the presence of social media
Yeah.
in our lives.
Hmm. And let's skip to the end. You know, that's uh that's what they're saying the future is. Basically, she went with the
Yeah,
social media guy.
yeah. I think that like it's I'm not super stoked about it's a very funnily enough superhero movie stance on science, which is she's a special storm genius,
She
and
is.
she can just tell, you know,
Part
like,
science, part religion, baby.
she's like this like storm whisperer,
I think
and
okay,
and a large like a large part of it
I knew
is
you would hate that.
yeah, whereas she has this like instinctual connection to tornadoes
Yeah.
and the people who just do the science don't know what's going on because they don't feel it. They're not
Yeah.
like
They
I
were
think
the
when like
they were the worst at it in the whole movie, the scientists.
yeah
And they were painted in the most evil light.
yeah and when
Like
like
in a very Hollywood movie way, where like they get mud sprayed on them and they frown and stuff.
yeah and like and it's almost like it's a point of guilt when it's revealed that the social media guy like has a meteorology degree. They're
Uh-huh.
like oh wait he has a you know he has a degree in meteorology. Dun
Yeah.
dun. It's
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's also in contrast to Avatar, which is a strange thing to bring up. But like in Avatar, like especially the second one, where like in the first Avatar movie, all of the scientists were good guys without like every person who was a scientist was a good guy. And the second movie, they like the whaling boat has a marine biologist
Hmm.
and he's working with the whalers. I'm like, oh, cool, an evil scientist. Like this is finally like we're not just painting all military guys as pure evil and all scientists as pure good. And then like it turns out he's like, oh, I drink every night because of the work I do. I'm like, oh fuck
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Well,
It's
we'll get into Avatar. We're gonna have a lot of time to talk Avatar by the end of the current series. A
but like
lot.
it's yeah, it's exact opposites where it's like, oh,
Hmm.
if a person like relies too much on the science, they don't understand the tornadoes.
Hmm.
You have
I
to.
think, well, I know what you mean. And if I were like had anything depending on it in real life, I would definitely go with um the scientist people. But
Mm,
I think if you abstract it, what they're
I,
talking about is like intuition. She represents the
yeah.
intuitive one, and the scientists represent the people that can't believe in anything that's not straight in front of their face. And so they can't predict, the tornado. I mean, it's a silly movie, but it's one of my favorite movies because it's something where and this happens a lot actually. They get a bunch of like highly creative people, the most creative people in the world, to make a movie,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Hey, make this," and it's a piece of shit, and they're like, "Oh man, okay." But since there's the most creative people in the world, they put a little things in there that are really meaningful and interesting
Mhm.
with it that most it'll go over most people's heads, but if you watch it closely, they're there. So and I like those kind of movies.
Yeah, and like I do feel like there is something to a movie that is made for a specific audience. Maybe not like like there has to be something in between like the Avengers where it's like, okay, this is a thing that where every that we have made a product for every human being in the entire world.
Yeah, yeah,
And Left Behind, which is if you're not our specific
yeah.
demographic, you will not watch this movie. And
Hmm.
this is like a little bit on the in between side where it's like, oh, we're going to a rodeo, and all the characters that are coded as being good guys love the idea of the rodeo,
Yeah,
and like the scientist guys are like, oh, rodeo, what's this all about? you
yeah.
know,
Why are
where
they
it's
scamming
it's it,
people out of their houses? I don't get it.
yeah.
Well, where to start? Okay, well, let me just lay my thesis out for this
Okay,
movie.
let's hear it.
I saw the whole thing as a metaphor for the film industry.
Okay, we're making some
The
jumps here, but let's hear it.
Well, let's even start at the very beginning, the first scene. There's a disaster that happens. The disaster is, COVID and the strikes. That killed Hollywood. Okay.
Okay,
And it kind of it kind of reminded me also of the fires that just happened in LA, where it's just
okay,
like there's a disaster that happens and it's basically the fall of the movie industry.
okay.
And before the disaster is the way we used to make movies, the way we used to chase twisters. That doesn't work anymore. And the twisters are getting worse. Twisters are
Oh yeah.
movies. And they're getting worse and worse and worse. And that's where we are today. And so there's, there's three groups. There's first off, there's the corporate people who have sort of taken in the old Hollywood, before the disaster uh,
Mhm.
of Hollywood. They've taken them in, and they're having them make movies, chase twisters for them. There's the new social media type of people that sort of like are under Hollywood, but are have a huge presence, and are kind of undermining the old Hollywood and are not respected. And then there's the girl. Now, what does the
Mhm.
girl represent?
Well, the girl probably represents the audience. She's like in the sense that she is forced to pick a side.
Yeah, she's forced to pick a side. Yeah, but I think the girl represents the artist, and she
Okay.
must decide: is she gonna go with the corporate people in the old way of making movies, like her boyfriend guy or the guy that wants to be her boyfriend,
Uh-huh.
or is she gonna go with the social media people and the kind of the more renegade version of Hollywood? Um, and she has to, the corporate people, what they're doing is not working.
Yeah.
And so they need the artist. Begrudgingly, they bring her on because they wish that they didn't need the artist, but
Hmm.
they don't have any intuition. So they do need her and they bring her with them. And in
So
that
you know what's you know
process,
what's
yeah.
what's funnier about this is that I think that the person who represents this dilemma a lot better than the girl
Hmm.
is her friend that works for the company,
Yeah,
because he's the one
he's an
who has to
interesting
make
character.
when he chooses to betray the company, he's the one making a real sacrifice.
Yeah. And he makes a sacrifice in letting the girl go too.
Oh, at the very
At
very
at the
end.
very end, yeah. He was like, "You know what? I'm not going to be the guy for you." Go, and he wants her.
So he's the one who's kind of like he's the one who's in bed with the corporate people.
Hmm.
Much in the way that the artist kind of has been. He's not like she would almost be, if in the metaphor, she would be a an outsider to the film industry and not an insider, because she's
Well, I'm okay. I'm talking now from my personal experience.
okay.
I got into the film industry and basically in 2008, right at the
Mhm.
time when it started turning. I think that was the year Iron Man came out. you know? And so it was like, bam, the, and I had no idea then, the absolute worst time to get into the film industry to be a filmmaker, you know, and an artist.
Mhm.
And I sort of laid dormant for 10 years, you know, while this crap has been going on. And that's kind of how I connected to the girl about that, which is like, you know what, this whole game sucks now. And
But like you've never been a part of this kind of movie though.
this is getting into a therapy session, but you know, I have ideas, of course. I have, like she had the idea for the tomato tornado tamer. She had the idea for that way back then, and then she put it on hold, because of the disaster. And I think the movie, in a way, if you see it the way that I do, is a call to artists to be like, hey, the corporate people need you, you know? But do you need them? Nowadays, you don't necessarily. You can pick up a camera and make a movie and distribute it online.
I was kind of mulling about the idea of the movie as a kind of an allegory for the disaster movie genre in specific.
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right.
Like it's supposed to like her. It's this like like where we had Twister and The Day After Tomorrow, which is one of the last ones,
Yeah,
and
and that movie's great. Even
Dante's
though
Peak.
yeah,
Yeah, like the disaster movie was like the summer blockbuster for a while. And like all of those movies, like nobody solves the disaster. Like this is just an awful thing that happens and you have to survive through, and then like the dust clears and the clouds dissipate and you lived.
And
And
then
I think
and the end of those is always you have your work cut out for you because the disaster has swept through and destroyed everything of your old world, and you have to rebuild
yeah,
the new one.
and I view like the idea of like making disaster movies is like chasing tornadoes,
Hmm.
where she was chasing tornadoes for forever, and then it just stopped happening. Like like people stopped going to the movies or whatever.
Hmm.
But like Hollywood stopped chasing tornadoes for like
Yeah.
20 years,
Well,
and and uh now she's back at it again, and with one big change. Like now instead of the disaster movie itself, being just the thing that you survive through, now like the new kind of disaster movie is you solve the disaster. You
you tame it.
you don't just survive the tornadoes, you tame them.
Hmm. What is a tornado? A tornado is something absolutely stunning and beautiful to look at.
And distinctly American.
Distinctly American. You're right. And but at the same time, and it draws people. It's so weird. Like there's these storm chasers that are
Yeah.
drawn to the tornadoes. It's only a very small amount of weirdos, like, like filmmakers or artists.
Yeah.
And but they're so like making a movie, it's a tornado-like process. It's complete chaos. Even the most organized places that you make movies are complete chaos. And but that's what's beautiful about it too.
Yeah.
And so, she was scared of doing it for 10 years because it, you know,
Yeah, you don't
on
you
a
don't know if the movie's going to be successful or not. Like you
yeah,
don't know how it's going to turn out.
yeah. And that
Like and
that fear of failure is scary,
all it takes is like one or two big disasters to you know
which probably happened to the disaster genre. Like
yeah.
Moonfall. Did you see that?
No, it looked terrible.
Yeah, it was so bad. Because I think you're completely right. And I'm actually fascinated that you came up with that without us even talking about it. That you saw that it was kind of about disaster movies. I'm saying it's about all movies in
Yeah,
Hollywood
like it's
because
yeah, like to me like the movie has a very fuck yeah, we're back kind of energy to it.
yeah, the return. Yeah.
Yeah, the return. And I viewed it as like disaster movies are back on the menu. We're going to
Hmm.
be, you know, Dante's Peaks is coming out tomorrow.
Well, you know what's interesting? Where does the climax take place?
uh,
Where do they all go to at the very end? Where do they hide from the tornado at the very end?
oh, the movie theater.
At a movie theater. I don't think that's an accident. And what movie are they watching?
That I don't remember.
Frankenstein,
Oh, okay. That's
right?
yeah,
Which is the worst place to go to, I would think, for a tornado.
yeah. Well, it's a huge like empty box with like a lot of surface area and empty space on the inside. It's got to be the kind of building that just like immediately falls apart
Yeah.
in a big tornado.
So, that's one of those things where when something is completely illogical and like
Mm-hmm.
makes no is kind of comes out of nowhere and makes no sense, you think, okay, why are they shoehorning this in there?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I did a quick Google search to double check, and the term that the Weather Service describes is especially dangerous.
Yeah. So, when the people that know all about twisters are telling people to go into an extremely dangerous part. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little silly, but yeah. I mean, it was also silly the way that the twister sucked up people. Like, if they like lifted their bodies too far off the ground, they would get sucked up, which I don't know. Is that like the secret to avoiding a twister is just to lay flat on the ground?
I guess if you're laying flat on the ground, like you're maximizing your friction to the ground and minimizing like the surface area for the wind to hit you with. But it was almost like the twister was just hiding an invisible monster.
Yeah, it was. Uh,
Like 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 you can almost like see like the clawed hand of the invisible monster grabbing them by the ankles and pulling them into the sky.
hmm Yeah, it was very selective. It was very selective in who it took. Why don't we get into our boy? Interestingly, what's his name again? The main the rodeo guy. He
I don't.
he's an actor who's been showing up, and to me,
He,
he's like the opposite of Timothy Chalamet.
I was
Timothy
I was
Chalamet,
I
yeah.
was actually right about to because like you've complained about Timothy Chalamet before, where he's
Yeah,
an
but I
action
will say
star
this year
who
he
doesn't
shut
look like
me
an
up.
action star.
He
Well,
what?
well, yeah, like you don't like the thing that you don't like about him is the fact that he doesn't look or act like an action star.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, this guy is like
the
he's
epitome.
yeah he's tall and blonde hair, blue eyed, handsome, muscular,
Charming.
uh, charming. Like he's
By
he's
the way,
he's
the blonde hair, blue eye part, that's not, that's that that's not part of my criteria, okay? Let's be clear about that. But yeah,
uh,
he is like exactly what you expect from a movie star that we've been missing for a long time.
yeah he's the very chiseled chin, all of it. Yeah.
What else, Nick?
No, I think I described him pretty good.
Did you find out his name?
I'm looking it up right now. Glenn Powell.
Oh,
Glenn
Glenn
Powell.
Powell. Okay. And I think he was in okay, I think he was in the other remake movie that was a giant success. The Top Gun.
Oh yeah, he was in Top Gun. He was the
Yeah. And the theme of that movie was essentially the same thing, which is we're bringing Hollywood back, you know? We're gonna make big dumb movies the way that they're meant to be made.
yeah.
And so he kind of in real life embodies this return to Hollywood again. But not a return to the old Hollywood, a return to the Hollywood ideals, like the ideal Hollywood, like the Odysseus of Hollywood. And they're taking like the ideal of Hollywood that we've lost into the future in the next generation's hands.
Hmm.
And like I kind of with the Top Gun movie, I kind of felt like it was Tom Cruise saying, "Hey, this is what movies should be. Now here you go, Glenn," you know, and handing it
Yeah.
over. I think to any filmmakers out there, be ready because like the spirit is in the air to reform a broken by any metric, I think, a
Yeah.
broken Hollywood. Like nobody goes, you go to a movie theater, there's like, if it's not on like a Saturday or something or a Friday night, there's like four people in every theater I ever go to.
Yeah. And I think it's also that it's specifically the blockbuster action movie,
Yes.
because both these movies are distinctly American. Like Top Gun is very much a, I don't know if I would call it a patriotic movie, but a movie that kind of almost assumes that its audience is going to be mostly Americans.
Yeah.
That's another kind of annoying thing with like modern action movies. It's because it's not just the superhero thing. It's also that for some reason like the Godzilla and King Kong movies have been turned into an infinite series
Hmm. Under our
where it's
nose.
yeah where like instead like this where the I think there's also like stakes fatigue, I guess you could call it, where every single movie is about saving the entire world.
Or the universe. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
where it's like, what, can we just have some more realistic stakes just for
Yeah.
a couple of movies? Even even when I was like still watching like regularly watching superhero movies, I'm like I was just getting tired of it. Like why can't Spider-Man just save like a neighborhood in New York? Why is that impossible? Why does it always have to be, the galaxy?
Yeah.
Like it's
Like that's why I think Spider-Man was like the best superhero movie because it kind of just laid it all out right there at the beginning, which is which is like you have this power, use it responsibly, you know? And that
yeah.
power is like being an adult and growing up. And so it's
Mhm.
like the Avengers kind of just strayed so far away from that and became their own mindless thing that just repeated a formula so often that they forgot what the where the formula even came from, and they're just
Yeah,
doing it with no meaning at all, you know?
yeah, it's like we're a bunch of super powered people and we save the universe and that's what's happened. That's what we do.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's no personal stake to it, you know? There's no
yeah,
like
and
metaphor for who these people are. And they're also just so powerful that it just doesn't there's no stakes. There's at the same time the most stakes and also no stakes because they
yeah,
can't because they can't die, or if they do, they're going to come back at the
yeah.
beginning
There
of the
was,
next one.
I think, okay. I think at one point I was watching like a Red Letter Media review of the Black Panther movie,
Uh-huh.
and they were talking about the scene where they're describing the powers of the Black Panther suit, and they're like, so what it does is that if you activate this thing, then any damage that you receive, the suit will just absorb, and then they can punch you back later, use that power to hit the other person back.
Uh-huh.
And the reviewer was like, oh, thank God. I was concerned that there would be any danger at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Glenn Powell, our hero, he is of the country.
Yeah,
He's a country guy, but he's also a TikToker. That that threw me through a little bit of a loop.
like I don't view like social media as a particularly like country or metropolitan thing.
Hmm.
Like I work in all kinds of places, big cities, small towns, and the people living in like rural areas are no less captured by TikTok
Mm.
than people living in the city.
We're really opening up on this. The- yeah, but that's true because what TikTok does is, let's just say social media. What
Yeah,
that does is it really democratizes media, and not just who can see it, not just who could see it, but who can make it too.
yeah,
And you can be just as successful. And I think there's a good lesson to those filmmakers out there. You don't need to move to Hollywood to be successful. I mean, it has its perks, like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like you need to
yeah.
own property in Hollywood. This is why you own property in Hollywood. I mean, I think there is something to be said for that for sure. But it's also becoming less and less important. There really is no reason why you couldn't make a movie in Tulsa and it not be great.
The incentives created by the algorithm do not incentivize spending huge amounts of time on making a wonderful work of art.
Well, that's what That's I'm working on that. You know about that.
Yeah, we're this is this is the project.
Yeah. But, I think the one thing that Hollywood has is like a concentration of creatives. And that's something
Mhm.
that big cities have, like New York and stuff. People come from all over the country who are creative to convene in one place and hobnob with each other,
Yeah, yeah, like
create a
that,
sort
like
of crucible of creativity.
yeah, and like if it's there's a concentration of people who want to be creative. There's the whole joke of like you're of the waiter having a script.
Yeah. But so, Glenn Powell, I would say that he's country. He's got half country in him, but also half, city. And he
Yeah,
says he has that meteorology degree. So he's in both realms.
yeah.
And same with the girl too, because the girl was from the country, and then she moved to the city, and she became a city girl, and then she came back to the country. So she's seen both sides as well. Like they've
Mhm.
both seen both sides,
Well, they're
and
there,
they're
and but the thing is that the like in terms of image, like presenting an image, they're both mixed.
yeah.
Neither of them is really belongs in either world entirely.
Hmm.
But Glenn Powell is fully presenting his country.
Yeah.
Like there's and the girl is fully presenting as metropolitan.
Yeah.
And all both of them are just putting up a kind of facade.
Yeah. Well, they have like there's the big U and the little U. And well, oh, interesting. Yeah, they're putting up a facade.
Like yeah, where they're like on the inside they're both very similar, but they like when they first encounter each other, it's like it almost seems like oil and water.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. Would you trust somebody who puts their face on a t-shirt? Better question. Should I put my face on a t-shirt?
You
But
shouldn't own any other t-shirts.
it just goes to show like to be a successful artist, you need to have both sides. You need to
Mhm.
have the technical that and that's one of the things that I don't tell everybody. I don't say everybody can be a filmmaker because there's a very few amount of people that have the chops to do it, because you need to have the artistic ability
Mhm.
and you need to have the technical sort of organizational know-how, of a bean counter also.
Yeah.
And you have to have
Yeah, like
both those
well,
sides to be able to make a movie well.
yeah. And yeah, movie making is a strange as a form of art because it's the buy-in is so high.
Yeah. But not
Like
as high. Like that's the reason why like Glenn Powell could just go around in his pickup truck and, now
well, he's making content, but he's not making movies.
exact Nick, you called it so well. That's exactly the point. Is they need her to make because that's where social media is right now. It's highly effective as attention grabbing and easily distributed
Yeah,
and anyone can democratized. It just doesn't have it doesn't have the depth of a
yeah,
real film yet. And that's why the movie's so prescient because it's saying you need to you need to bring that to TikTok. TikTok is perfect as a platform. It just needs the touch of a deep thinker, or the deep thinkers of this generation.
yeah. Okay, so I don't exactly remember what the context of this was, but like I was watching some guy. and he wanted to insult this like YouTube channel or something to like in order to call it like vapid and meaningless and stupid. And the phrasing that he used to insult this channel was, it's the platonic ideal of content. Like
Interesting.
that, yeah, it was like it's just content for content's sake.
Yeah.
And I think if we could like have, you know, replace content with art to a certain extent, that would make TikTok a much more positive
Yeah.
influence on society.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. I mean, I actually think it's going to be YouTube or something like YouTube
Something a little more
where
long form.
yeah, it's got to be long form. But it'll get figured out, but whatever way it is, it's not going to be the way that it was, where you have to ask permission from a giant corporation that has anything but art on its mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they restrain artists so much, but it's gonna have to be more long form, yeah. And I don't
Yeah,
think that TikTok would be like a marketing avenue
yeah.
for it. But all
Well,
right,
I
well,
think,
yeah,
yeah, I think on that note, I think horror movies in general are kind of interesting. We're not going to quite touch on that yet, but like the idea of making something intentionally disquieting and unpleasant
yeah,
is kind of the opposite of like being of TikTok, where it's supposed to be like, digestible and pleasant and easy and just
yeah.
just 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 a way to swipe away an entire afternoon. I
Well,
think
it's
like
it's it's the equivalent of a superhero movie where there's no stakes, there's no fear, nothing like that. And it's like when you have a dream, there's a reason that you have bad dreams. It's to kind of like make you work through some things.
Mhm.
And you can't really be thrilled for that long if there's absolutely no stakes or conflict.
Yeah.
So you need to have quick videos like TikTok does.
Mhm.
And yeah. And it kind of like the TikTok videos are bad for people too because they it in a I mean it's a meme to say that, but in a very specific way, which is it makes you a superficial thinker in that you don't dive into things. You just watch it, dispose of it, and forget about it. You don't think about TikTok videos the next day. You think of
Yeah.
a great movie, your entire life, and you draw lessons from it your whole life. I think that's much more important for people to consume.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like
I think, yeah,
there are certain movies that like had dramatic impact on me. Like Shawshank Redemption. Like it's kind
yeah,
of like a cheesy answer. Like, oh, it was, of a sort of a very classic answer to give for like what a good movie is. But so there's that. Like, and there's also like the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
yeah,
like the Peter Jackson trilogy. Like I think
yeah,
like
completely.
I would say that it would not be out of the ordinary for me to think about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you know, once a day for an entire week.
I
Just
know.
just like as I'm going through my daily routine, just it's like, oh, that reminds me of that.
On your way to Mordor.
In Mordor, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, both of those movies very mythological and very perfect
Mhm.
metaphors too. Um,
Yeah.
so Glenn Powell, he's supposed to be he's supposed to be sort of this country guy that's, and like what does the country why are country people like what does the country philosophy, why is that important
I think it's like the
as opposed to
I think
the
that
metropolitan? Yeah.
I think the movie is trying to say something by making both of the protagonists hybrids.
Hmm.
Like where, like what makes America great is the combination of these two groups of people.
Yeah, and instead of fighting each other, we should combine forces.
Hmm. Yeah, it
Because,
was
but what does the country specifically offer? You know?
I think in this movie it's very clearly intuition.
Yeah.
Uh, like what like the mom almost comes out and says what the movie's about.
I love it when characters do that. It makes my life easy.
Yeah, where she's like, oh, she could predict storms better than the cows,
Mm.
and then she like had to correct herself, like no, and like literally tell the audience that's a good thing. The cows are like you know, like if there's anything that's a direct symbol of the country, it would be a cow.
Yeah, completely.
So like the cow, like the cows understand the weather, in a way that science doesn't.
Didn't the wasn't like the big image of the Twister a cow
A, a cow flying into the tornado.
flag? Wasn't it?
I think it was. It,
Yeah.
it it's I might be misremembering it because that was also a very key image in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah.
Was a
Anyway.
cow with a tornado. So,
Anyway,
so there's something about cows and tornadoes.
well yeah, I mean, they're connected because that's where tornadoes happen.
But yeah, you need to have this like you almost starting with the intuition and then sort of running that through the dispassionate science,
Yeah.
or maybe vice versa. Starting with the science and then using your intuition to inform those decisions.
Yeah, but I think that the girl is the intuition and Glenn Powell, he's like the cowboy, right?
I think
Because
they're both hybrids. She's coming back to the country to relearn how to be intuitive about tornadoes and to regain her connection to the country. And Glenn Powell is
well, remember he got
he's
into it after a bull accident or a bull riding accident.
yeah, but he also he's kind of returning to his educational his roots, as not his roots, but like he
No, no,
does
no.
have this
Go down that way. Yeah, his
like
roots.
he does have this history with the academic aspect of storm chasing that he kind of suppressed for a long time, and she brought that out in him
Hmm.
in all those barn scenes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
they're kind of this influence on each other where they're both working together to create this hybrid of intuition and science to solve the to tame the tornado.
Yeah. Well, and also I would say he kind of so what is he doing that's so different? He's kind of brave, you know? He's kind of it's kind of it's kind of the same lesson as Top Gun where like the main character's problem was he was too afraid. I don't know if you remember that
Mm.
movie that well. But she was
Like Top Gun Maverick or Top Gun?
Maverick. I haven't actually seen it.
Oh, you
First,
haven't?
no. But
Oh,
yeah, like the main do you remember in Maverick the Miles Teller
yeah. Where
character? He was
yeah, where
too afraid to go low.
he's too timid. Yeah,
He's too timid and I feel like she had the same problem and he taught her to be brave.
yeah. Well, he also like a part of this is like the trauma creating
Yeah,
a block that they have to like push through.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I felt that too. And I think that he gets his bravery from being rooted, with his authenticity,
And
Um,
also rooting himself into the ground with his mega truck.
exactly. You knew I was gonna love that. Yeah. He's
Of
literally grounded to the earth with
yeah.
his big stupid truck. And that's a beautiful symbol. And it's like that's where he gets all of his confidence and his power from is being grounded. And I think when you live in a city, you get disconnected, you know,
Hmm.
from nature and from intuition, and you kind of forget who you are. And like that's like the disease of living in a city. And so when she came back to the country, she had to kind of reground herself and relearn, yeah, this is who I am, you know?
Hmm.
And just like in The Return, that's where her power comes from, is from her authenticity and being who she is as opposed to not being who she really is. And that's why she probably left the city because she wasn't feeling,
Well, yeah. Well, she seemed like when she was at like the weather place, she was almost bored.
yeah,
Where someone like waved her over and was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And she's like looking bored and just been like,
yeah,
that's not gonna do it. That's not gonna turn anything.
yeah,
They'll dissipate in the next 5 hours.
yeah. That's so perfect because, you know, she didn't have a tornado right there to look at. And so she was
Yeah.
just disconnected from it all. It was like on a screen, you know?
Hmm.
And so that really is bad for the soul, you know? Do you remember when they were talking about the model and they were like if, she was said something like what if it doesn't work? And then he goes or it was either him or the mom said, "Well, if it doesn't work then we'll just have to build a new one."
Yeah, like we're why are you so scared of failure when failure is not the end of the world? Yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, and also, yeah, exactly. Like if this doesn't work, we'll just, it'll suck, but we'll scrap it. We'll start a new one. And it's
Hmm.
like the movie industry. It's like the model the model doesn't work right now. So
Yeah,
we gotta build a new one and a better one.
yeah. And if a couple, if we have a new model and some of the movies suck, they suck. We'll move on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just want to say one last thing. Do you remember the last shot of this movie?
No.
They're in the airport looking out into the sky and a storm is coming. So there's a storm coming, a black cloud. So what does that mean?
So like yeah, so the idea that there's going to be either more action movies like Twisters or very specifically more disaster movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Given
Um,
that this movie was fairly successful, there we might be seeing some more disaster movies in the next couple of years.
yeah. Probably they'll like everything whenever really
Bad ones.
successful. Yeah, they'll learn all the wrong lessons from this.
Yeah.
But that happened even in the best of times. So
So I think
yeah,
I'm ready to
but
move on to. Oh, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. There's couple last things quick things I want to say. Firstly, the storm is a perfect metaphor, though, I think, because it's so daunting, you know, to
Hmm.
have that on your shoulders. Like, it's up to the new generation to make movies now, and it's like that's such a daunting task and dangerous in a lot of ways, because they're so expensive, for
Yeah.
one.
Well, and also like like all of the history or not history, but like the how loaded of a statement is like the coming storm
Hmm.
is almost never. You're almost never talking about a thing that's fantastic for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And but it's like I always think about like, agricultural societies when they saw a storm coming, it was like it was like they had mixed feelings about it, I would think.
Yeah, it's dangerous, but like the rain can help bring new life or
Yeah, it's
whatever.
yeah, so they'll probably some people will, in those times, some people will die from the storm, but everyone will live because it'll bring rain that feeds the crops and
Yeah,
everything. So
yeah,
it's like that. I think that's the feeling I hope everyone is left with when they finish this movie. And I hope people do watch this movie.
yeah. I enjoyed it.
And then I also think in a way to tie it into the next movie, the idea of taming the tornado is an interesting idea. You know, it's
Mhm.
this he says in the movie, you don't face your fears, you ride them, you know. So it's like, at the beginning of the movie, like a myth, it means two things. The disaster that happened on the beginning means a bunch of different things. And one of the things that it means is is just, that psychological trauma that happens to people. She ran away from it, you know. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't do that. You should not only face your fear. The quote should be, you should not only face your fears, but ride them. Because you have
Mhm.
to face your fears to be able to ride them. But to not only face it, but to overcome it. Take that power that's against you and push it and put it in your own army and make it work for you, you know?
Mhm. And
And
speaking of riding,
and speaking of writing and wild men,
mhm,
let's move on to the
the
bike riders.
bike riders, which I would say like my favorite of the, like this one's fighting the return for my favorite of the bunch.
I agree with you so much. Yeah,
Mhm.
this movie was a classic movie. Like it's those classic movies that
It's
you know.
like I got a lot of good fellas out of this one. Like this is gonna sound super out of left field, but like Requiem for a Dream, like the
Hmm.
this criminal enterprise that was like supposed to be this beautiful hopeful thing. Like, oh, we're gonna start a bike club. Like we're gonna be a bunch of bikers. It's gonna be the coolest thing. This is and like everyone's gonna be cool and powerful, and it's gonna fulfill all it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. And then just the process of being this criminal enterprise and the sort of corrupting nature of crime and violence and control, like
Hmm.
essentially ruins this entire project and ruins many of the original members.
Well, I actually wouldn't say that any of the original members were corrupted. I think they all either died or moved on good people.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
And
Well, I mean, like the club itself becomes corrupted.
yes, yes, that's the right way to say it, I would say, yeah. Because it's the next generation that moves in that is super scary, that corrupts the organization and makes it into a bad thing.
Yeah, like there's this thing that exists that they didn't have to build,
Uh-huh. They're the
like the
suitors.
suitors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
you have this.
they weren't
I keep
better
going.
they weren't better fighters or more ideological or anything. All they did was they just played dirty and they had no morals to them, and that's why they won, you know.
Yeah, yeah, like they like this club was a thing that was built on mutual trust
Hmm.
and like it wasn't really a financial vehicle for any of these people.
No,
It was it was just
like a
like
bowling
this
league or something. I think they even say that.
yeah, almost like a way to be a man almost
Yes,
where
totally.
yeah, where like
I got
there's
that too.
where the purpose of the club wasn't to like sell drugs and make a bunch of money, but to like be brave and dangerous and sort of revel in masculine power.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of manhood too is freedom. Want like a desire for freedom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, we can get in. That's Benny, obviously. But
Yeah.
do you remember how I thought, well, oh man, what's his name? The Tom Hardy character.
Oh yeah.
Um, so interesting because he just, he had this that scene at the end when he died. He like
Mm-hmm.
he like left his wife, and the wife was like, "Can you pick up some eggs? I don't want to run out." It was
It's
totally a
like
normal, and he knew he was gonna die.
I really
I think he did. I think he knew he was gonna die
I think it was also
because
like
he made peace with Benny's wife right beforehand.
oh yeah. I think it was also that like he like the juxtaposition between like that and like the first time his authority was challenged
Mm-hmm.
was super
Exactly.
interesting where
Really well done.
where where he said, knives or fists, and the guy's response was, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah. Geez, I don't want to kill you. Yeah.
Yeah, and like not only did the other guy like suggest knives like later on, but he went far beyond what Tom Hardy even thought was in the cards.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe he thought that he could die. There's a chance that he could die, not that he was going to.
Yeah, it's like okay, this is the type of fight where I could get seriously hurt. I'm gonna go make amends.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even aware of how bad things had got under his watch.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, there was a weird fate to his character too, because he kind of knew that he couldn't handle the new generation and he couldn't handle the new times that were coming, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He saw the spirit of the times. And that's why he was like desperately trying to get Benny to take over the club because and then once Benny left, he was like, "Okay." But he was a man about it. And he didn't escape. Like you were hoping the whole time like he's just going to get out of this and like get out of the way, but he never did.
Because
He
the movie made such a point about him like having a full-time job and having a wife and kids.
Yeah, having stuff to lose basically.
Yeah.
And the kids, the new generation, they don't, you know. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
anything to lose. There was a great scene in it too where the kid was leaving the parents
Mm-hmm.
and he was wearing his jacket and everything. And you know, with the power of violence, he turned the tables on the older people and he became powerful over them for the first time. And
Well, that
he
yeah, that was kind of a precursor to his duel with Tom Hardy,
uh-huh.
where like it just did not occur to his dad that he was going to take things that far, that he was going to
Yeah.
push the violence beyond what was originally thought was possible.
Yeah. And the same with the incident with early on with the car, where he like surprised the regular driver in that 50s car. But the way that Tom Hardy like so why did Tom Hardy die with why didn't he just leave the club?
I think like it's like out of a sense of honor.
Yeah. And yeah, and it just shows like I built this, I'm going down with it. It also kind of works on a symbolic level too, because this is a movie about a changing of times, a turnover of
Yeah,
times. And the old time must die for the new time to arise. And in a
yeah.
way, it's like,
Well, yeah. Here's a case of that being a terrible thing.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. This is what happens when Telemachus takes over and is not prepared or something like that,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, like what
Um,
one of the suitors.
yeah, this is what happens when Penelope settles.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why she shouldn't settle.
yeah. I think there's also like to me it was kind of interesting that the movie is not narrated by a major player in the story. It's told from a female perspective. Like all this, I don't understand all this violent stuff. Why these people have to behave like this? This is so dumb.
Yeah,
They,
exactly.
they
It's a feminine perspective of just doesn't make sense.
yeah, like this guy is really going to put his life on the line just to prove he's a tougher guy. Like that's so
Hmm.
insane to me.
And
Like that, like
yeah,
that's
exactly.
basically the perspective like that the movie takes.
Well, and she doesn't understand why Benny left either. You know, what she loves about Benny is his freedom, and it's also
Mhm.
what she wants to, you know, like a tornado,
Tame.
what she wants to tame about him, you know? So she's sort of,
Yeah, she's
um,
she's kind of like ambivalent about
yeah.
the whole wild man idea.
When does society need wild men? You know, why do we need wild men? Why are they a good thing? Because this is sort of a Western in a way, actually, if you think about it. It's sort of a new world and a new society that they've built from scratch. In this Wild West, sort of like there's this freedom, but there's also this encroaching evil that you have to, when you have a lot of freedom, you have to account for there's going to be a lot of people that use that freedom to do really bad things with impunity.
Yeah, like if if all it takes is a man with a gun and a white hat to protect the homesteaders,
Yeah.
then all it takes is a man with a gun and a black hat to endanger the whole operation.
Yeah. That is a threat to freedom as much as
Civilization.
civilization is. Yeah. One of the one of the things about it that connected with me to The Return was, do you remember how Tom Hardy came up with the idea for the club?
Wasn't like he was already in a like a dirt bike racing club,
Uh-huh.
and he saw it on TV here. He watched a movie or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So he watched the ideal. Like he was watching TV and he looked at like Marlon Brando, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the funny thing is that they weren't like they did crime, like they did illegal stuff, but at the end of the day it was a lot less Goodfellas and a lot more Fight Club,
Yeah, they weren't
where
harming
they
anybody.
well it's also like they're not doing this because it's a criminal enterprise to make money. It's like, hey, we want to like capture, like recapture our lost masculinity.
Hmm.
Like we're gonna form this club to be tough guys, and the whole point of the club is just to be tough guys, and that's really about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's sort of like the when the kids saw them, they, learned the wrong lesson, which is like, oh, this is what masculinity is. It's lording your power over people and tyrannizing weaker people than you, you
Yeah,
know? And it's like, no, 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 no. Masculinity is something a little more nuanced than that, you know? Way more
yeah,
nuanced than that.
yeah. Because the older generation, like most of the time when they did something really like awful and violent, it was in defense of some other member.
Yeah.
Like Benny was wearing his jacket in some place where he probably shouldn't have been,
Uh-huh.
and a lot like you have like this, like this. It's almost like identity, like
Exactly.
him showing his true colors. Like I am, I'm a tough guy, and if someone else wants to be the toughest guy in the room, then I'm going to contest that. and he sends that
Yeah.
message essentially just by wearing a certain jacket.
Yeah, he's fearless. He's fearlessly authentic.
Yeah,
Um, and he actually rubs it in people's faces too. Like not just them, but everybody. He's like his wife to his wife. I'm going to be who I am and I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to do what I want to do. And
mm.
even to Tom Hardy, he says, "I don't want to do nothing for nobody and I don't want nobody to bother me." In every situation that he's in, he's just purely utterly himself, you know. And
Yeah,
that gets him into trouble. It gets you into trouble a lot. It's like it's almost Mr. Blonde in a way, where he's just like he doesn't have a alter ego. He doesn't have another face that he puts on for society. He's just he's just who he is,
he's although he in this case
not a bad guy.
he's like a he's like brave and generous and loyal, rebellious.
But he has a
Well,
good
Mr. Blonde
heart.
is Mr.
Yeah.
Blonde is a violent psychopath who, if you belong to a group that he doesn't like, you deserve torture.
Or if you press the button. I told her not to press it. Yeah, and like their real enemy, their real enemy is and this is like the history of the bike riding stuff too. Their real enemy is conformity and, the cops. So like they have a
Well,
bunch of scenes where they get into it with the cops. And
they're I would say their real enemy is hmm, it's strange, like, because like you would that conformity and authority are the things that they're kind of railing against,
yeah.
but the club itself demands conformity
A
and
great point. Yeah.
submission to the authority of the person in charge.
Okay. I love this road you're going down. No pun intended. But do you
Mm.
remember what the club was called? What their name
The
was?
Vandals.
Yeah. So, when you sack Rome and you have to build your own Rome on top of it, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get other vandals that want to sack you.
Mm.
And so you need to become the exact thing that you kind of were rebelling against.
Yeah, like once you knock down the walls and move in, you realize that the walls are there for a reason.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of cyclical.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, like I think like even an even better example would be the Mongols in China. Like, okay,
explain.
good, we like they'll take over like some northern territory. Be like, okay, good, we're in charge now. Those other Mongols that are still living on the plains are looking pretty scary. Let's let's build some walls.
Or one big one, even.
Oh yeah, we're a big one. Yeah, and yeah, and at the end, like someone who is even more violent and cares even less for authority, does in fact take over.
Hmm. Yeah, and so if that's like a civilizational cycle, then, and I do think that this movie is talking broadly about civilization in general. How do you stop that cycle from just getting worse and worse? Because, you know, the way that the cycle is set up now is the only people that can defeat the next generation are even darker dudes, than them.
Hmm.
So how do
Well,
you stop that?
I think like the like having like converting the organization itself into something tamer and more civilized is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Or at least
And do you think
that's.
do you think Johnny, I think his name is Johnny, Tom Hardy. Do you think Johnny
I think you're
wanted
right.
do you think he wanted to do that?
Well, no, I think he fled his civilized, calm, nonviolent life to make the club.
So that
Like I
maybe
think
that's
it's
why he died because he would
like
rather
he couldn't live in this world that he created.
exactly. He couldn't live in either way. He couldn't live either way because, you know, he couldn't step away from the freedom he had. He he had gained from the club. But he also couldn't restore order to it. He couldn't be the new man. He didn't want to be the man, you know? Um, so the only option for him was to die free.
Like he couldn't fully take it as a he couldn't fully live as a I think he was like a mechanic or something.
Mm,
Like he couldn't like that life was just not wild and free enough for him. But he couldn't also accept the cost that a wildlife brings. Like he seemed genuinely disturbed by the process of punishing people for leaving the club.
hmm.
Because that one guy who wanted to be a bike cop.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. He became the man. That guy became the man.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was also like crazy the way that guy was talking about like being a police officer was like, yeah, just me and my bike, freedom.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he
And I was
he
like,
kind of was able to delude himself into thinking that was freedom.
yeah. But on the other
Um,
hand, like it's like, yeah, that is kind of like a diluted thing. Like you're,
he's
uh,
justifying it. You know, he knows he needs to
mhm,
leave. He knows they all need to get out of this. It's gotten too crazy. And so he's
mhm.
like, what's the next best thing? Uh,
Like if I like what's a way that I can spend all day on a bicycle and also be powerful and feel powerful.
hmm. Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that's
He became the enemy of freedom that an order that Johnny could not. Well, what do you think is Johnny's relationship to Benny? Like, what are they symbolically, do you think like they had two important conversations. They had the one conversation where Johnny wanted Benny to take over the club and Benny refused.
mhm.
And then they had another conversation where Johnny brought it up again. And Benny said, "Listen, dude, it's not me. It's not me."
I think
And
like I don't know. I think Benny is kind of a person who's defined by his loyalty to the people he cares for.
yeah, he actually is very loyal in his own way, in his actions, you know.
Yeah, like his yeah like loyalties. I would say his defining characteristic, like his loyalty to his to Johnny and to his wife. She did they get married? I think they get married.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's an important thing at the end too. I would
So like
say,
he's
yeah.
so like his relationship to the club is almost secondary to his sort of loyalty to Johnny as an individual and like to the other like original members.
Yeah.
So like he could never lead the club as an organization because because the organization means nothing to him. It's only like the other people.
He understood that where most people couldn't understand that it was the people,
Yeah.
not the organization, because the organization got easily taken over by horrible
Yeah.
people, and it ran the
Yes. It's
organization into the ground.
mm.
And so, like the organization, which at first was a symbol of freedom and manhood, became a symbol of violence and toxicity
And also like
and
like it's just
criminality. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like now instead of being like an authority that restricts your freedom but keeps people safe, now it's just as authoritarian, but now it's violent and dangerous.
Yeah.
Like it's worse than the authority that's trying to replace.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is like when the new guys came around and the club started turning, Benny, they don't make a big deal about it. Like, but he just like disappears from the movie. He's just gone.
Oh
And they
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
it, but only after the fact, like, hey, where's Ben? Is Benny around? But they don't have like a scene where he packs up all his things and leaves, I don't think. It's just like,
What I think like the movie shows what happens if you make the clear and telegraphed decision to pack your
that's a,
things and leave.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Is
You're
your
punished
best
as an
friend comes to your
apostate.
house and shoots you in the leg?
Yeah, I don't get what was up with that. Why was he doing him a favor by
I
doing
think he was.
that?
I think this was like he was being like absolved of his commitment to the club through like penance.
Got you. Okay.
Where like that's how I saw it, which is like, hey, we can't just let people leave, but I'm gonna let you go. And here's the thing: like, no one's gonna bother you because your punishment has been metered out already. Like
Mm.
you've received your punishment for leaving, and you're gone, and that's it. You know, that's
Yeah,
the period at the
and
end of the sentence.
that's a really because I thought my first reaction was, why does he like they need to make him look injured or something to get protection like from the police or something like that, you know?
Oh, okay.
But I don't think that that quite works. I like your explanation way better.
Yeah, like,
Um,
and also like that's just like my explanation has no more authority than yours because I that's just how I
yeah,
interpreted it.
yeah. Neither of ours have any authority to anyone at all. Let's be clear.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Um,
They're wild
but
man opinions.
but it was interesting that he brought Benny with him to do that. Yeah, and Benny did witness that and said, "I don't want to be a part of that," you know.
Yeah, like it's like why am I breaking a like why am I burning a bridge with a person that I care about for an organization that remains abstract?
Hmm.
Like is like this is like if hurting my friends is what this club's about, I don't want to be part of this club.
Yeah. And it's sort of like and then the rules start to happen and like to me Benny is a representation of freedom. That's what I think he is to me.
Yeah,
And he
that makes sense.
saw yeah, and he saw like man, if this guy had to go through that just to get out, just to be free, it's like I just want to be free, man. I don't want all these like rituals and rules and everything. Like I just like why do I need that to be free? You know, I can just be free.
Yeah.
Why do you need to be a part of something to be free? And I think that's a good question to ask. You know, why can't you just be who you are?
Yeah, like if I don't know, yeah, if they had just I think there's also like in terms of like where the club is going.
Hmm.
That's why I like that the guy from California
Yeah.
where like the guy seems like he's kind of aspirational in the fact that he's very tough. He's clearly gotten into a lot of fights and he's masculine, I guess, where he does what he wants. He's powerful. He's tough and strong, but he's also like his teeth are completely black. This kind of like violent and dangerous guy. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of like loyalty to his own people back in California because he joins up with the Vandals almost immediately.
Uh-huh.
And I think he's kind of this like very not only like violent and dangerous person like all the people in the club are trying to be, but he's also doesn't have the like the loyalty
Yeah.
that like all of the positive aspects of the club that they're trying to bring out, he's kind of lost.
And that's why he isn't accepted right away, or is kind of accepted with suspicion.
Yeah, like they let him in not because he's this cool guy that they want to hang out with, but because it's like, oh, this guy is he's a real tough guy. Like we want him.
But that's kind of the beginning of the end, though, where they let anybody in, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas it becomes more than just this group, like a tribe, you could say, even.
Hmm.
And then at first it's okay, because that guy ended up being cool. But then more and more people start to come in and like I think that if you start anything, whether it's like a book club or an island civilization or something, like you'll have to deal with these questions, you know? Like
Hmm.
who do we let in? Do we just let in anybody?
Well, that's the fun thing is that like the the younger guys that ended up killing
Yeah,
Johnny like sort of tested their metal.
he did. He gave them a
He,
test.
he
Yeah.
gave like a loyalty test,
Yeah, you're right.
not a loyalty to the club because they wanted to join the club, but loyalty to each other. Like, okay, these guys are all friends, they're together.
Yeah.
I'm going to test them. I'm going to see how much it takes for them to abandon their friends, and the answer is instantaneously.
Yeah.
So he's like, no, I don't want someone who's going to abandon their friends at the first sight of personal gain. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And then they go, but they what do? They join another chapter where Johnny's not he's not there to vet people.
It
So
it got out
that's
of
how they got in.
control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how they got into the club in the first place, and how they gained enough
They're
standing to
always
challenge him.
those evil people will always sneak in to some
Mm-hmm.
anything that's good, you know?
Yeah, but like
Um,
it's also like it was the decision to create additional chapters that Johnny was also reluctant to do.
mhm.
Like, we want to start we want to start a chapter. He's like, why? Like, if you want to start a club, go start a club. It's not you're not the Vandals.
Yeah, exactly.
And eventually, I don't exactly remember the circumstances where that ruling got overturned, but like when once Johnny was no longer had his hand on the steering wheel, then like all these other clubs can let in just about anyone, and now they're real vandals, and now it's all down, it all goes to shit.
Yeah. And Johnny set up a number of tests during the movie. Like when it came time to start another chapter and he said no, and then they had the fight, and then he won, but then he allowed the guy to
Oh
start
yeah,
the
that's
other
what happened.
chapter, and he said it's got to be my idea.
Mm-hmm.
See, he does a lot of those kind of like counterintuitive things and
Yeah,
just
like
like weird games.
yeah, like I'll let this decision that I don't like go through, but I have to establish my authority before I let that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is when Johnny died, all of the old guys that watched it happen,
Hmm.
they weren't driving bikes. They didn't drive
They were in their
bikes there.
cars.
They were in their
Yeah.
cars. So they've sort of
They've grown past the Vandals to a certain extent.
they have, yeah. And that's part of the lesson. I think the lesson of this movie is like y you have your time to be free. Every generation has their time to be free, and they must move on from that, you know. You can't be
Hmm.
free. You can't live that way forever, you know.
Yeah.
You'll be a loser. Like
Walk the earth.
walk the earth. when we finally see Benny again, he is not free at the very end. He kind of got his soul crushed when he found out that Johnny died,
Hmm.
and that broke him, like a horse. And his that took all the wild away from him, basically. That knowledge that Johnny,
But the,
and that's why they had this strange relationship. It's
mhm.
like they couldn't live without each other.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably why Johnny wanted to lead the club. He's like, oh, this guy understands what the club is about.
Hmm.
It's not about beating people up
Or I like what you
or
said, loyalty to the club. That's the
yeah.
wrong idea. And people do that.
Hmm.
People have loyalties to clubs,
To
big and small.
abstracts. Yeah.
Yeah, like um it doesn't it doesn't mean anything. The you
Hmm.
know, what means everything is like how you treat people and how you carry yourself and how you act. Just because you're a part of a club doesn't mean anything. Just because you
Yeah.
wear the jacket doesn't mean anything. It's just a jacket at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think shooting bike cop guy is what broke him more than anything.
Yeah,
Like, where it's like this is
this
this
is
is
not what it's
not
about.
right.
Well, it broke him in one way, and then he went away to be free.
Hmm.
But I think
Yeah.
Johnny dying broke his freedom. And that was like the fundamental thing about him
Yeah.
was the fact that without Johnny, he doesn't feel like he can be free. And that's why I think the two characters are actually their relationship is freedom and order. And that's the fundamentals of a society. That's what we're balancing in America all the time, hopefully,
Yeah.
is and I think America is so successful because we have a much better balance of that than any other place in the world. And so, without freedom, you have you have too rigid of an order, you know, and you
Well,
become
then
like the man. And or just
well,
real quick, I just want to
okay,
finish
yeah.
the thought. And then without order, you have absolute chaos and destruction. And so the moment Johnny died, without that substrate of order, Benny knew he couldn't be free anymore. It was freedom. Freedom was died with it. Because you need order to have freedom, and you need freedom to have order. They're connected.
Hmm. Yeah, because if there's no rules at all, then you're just following the whims of the strongest personality in the room.
The baddest dude. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's how
which
that's
is
what you warlords are.
yeah. It's like the kind of tyranny that can only be produced by like infinite freedom. And I think
Hmm.
I think that might actually be kind of like an interesting through line from over the last these three movies that we're talking about right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like for Odysseus, it was less like order versus chaos and more peace versus war.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, there was like the suitors was chaos, and Odysseus was coming to restore order.
Hmm.
I can
But
see that.
Odysseus was yeah, but and Odysseus was kind of like this wild, violent figure. Like
He
he,
was, yeah, such a good point. Yeah, because he had made himself wild to go to war, to be able to go fight in war, and then he
mhm.
had to make himself ordered again to come back.
Yeah. Like it's the like when he came back, the suitors kind of relied on a sort of they were a force of chaos, but they kind of felt protected by a sense of decorum.
Hmm.
And when Odysseus came back, he showed them what like true might makes right looks like.
Oh yeah, when he found a war in his native land, he knew how to deal with it because of his time in
Hmm.
Troy. And he could defeat monsters because of the what he had learned in Troy. But that wasn't the real test of the movie, was it? That wasn't really he always knew he could do that because he had
Yeah,
been to Troy. The real test was to civilize himself.
yeah, to rejoin civilization.
Yeah, to rejoin civilization. Exactly. Yeah, and I think you're right. All these movies, there is a through line of like, well, I think it's like a cyclical sort of thing that we're going
Hmm.
through now in our time, which is like the turnover of generations.
Hmm.
And it's a hard process because, well, first off, it's like the weak have become powerful who they over the people that used to be powerful over them. So there's like a certain thing of like, okay, are we gonna punish them? You know? You know? Are we gonna show mercy on them if they treated us badly? And that's why you should always treat the younger generation well, or else when you're, you know, when your generation becomes weak, you need to be taken care of by the younger generation. And if they're just
Hmm.
like, oh, fuck those people, all they did was screw me over my whole life, it's like, okay, well, you reap what you sow a little bit. Do you remember the story of Odysseus, or not Odysseus? I bet you remember that well. Um,
Yeah.
the story of Oedipus.
Yeah.
It's actually a common theme in a lot of those Greek stories. This idea,
Uh,
this fear of the child killing the father,
mhm.
and it's also like, or
Yeah.
Saturn was eating all the children so that they wouldn't take his place.
Hmm.
Um, and then they
Well,
all they
yeah.
all eventually do. Like it's just a
Yeah.
natural law.
Well, it was in that case it was the very act of violence of eating the children that caused them to revolt against him.
Exactly. Yeah. So and same with Oedipus. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that if he had not done the thing to prevent them from doing what they did, then they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, like if you like if you think that that crushing the powerless even harder is going to suppress their desire for revolt,
Hmm.
then you're just all you're doing is instigating the revolt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can see that in all three of these movies too.
Hmm. So when they in their attempt to tame the tornadoes are going to rise up and
Yeah, exactly.
defeat
No,
the humans
I mean more in the aspect
in the
of the
abstract
cor
way.
the big corporation guy,
Uh-huh.
and the scientists. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like
Like they had a lock
the
on this whole thing.
yeah, like the rural versus metropolitan thing maps vaguely onto the chaos versus order thing.
Hmm. And they're kind of telling you in Twisters like, you know, welcome chaos, but
Yeah.
tame it. Like welcome to chaos, but know that it's gonna be the more chaos, the more beautiful it's gonna be, and the more potential it has.
Well, yeah, for all
Once
of his
once you harness it. Yeah.
yeah, for all of his like wild man facade, he does respect the tornadoes.
Hmm.
Like if he was just fully like if he didn't have his eyes open to the danger of these things, he wouldn't have built his ridiculous mega truck. Uh,
Man, I want that truck.
I want a truck with augers.
I would say there's also like the idea of the ideal in all of these. Like so when you rebuild, so say it's like view all of these movies as like they're in some kind of a post-apocalypse. The most evident one is the return of all
Yeah.
these. But I think all of them have a sort of like, when you do a changeover, it's also like there is a death and rebirth.
Hmm.
And the younger generation has to ask when they're creating their new civilization, or continuing, they have to ask, like, what should this be? You know?
Hmm.
Because it's not obvious. And you don't want it to be the same as the old way. We'll get into that with Nosferatu. But it's like,
But
if
you
you
also want you don't want to throw away all of the good things from the old way.
exactly. So what do? You look towards a mythical ideal,
Hmm.
something that you can't attain exactly, and something that's actually not even real.
Yeah.
And it almost works if it's not real. And so
Well,
you
that's like yeah, that's like the Holy Roman Empire, which is like oh we built this thing like all out of chaos,
hmm
and we need an ideal to like to like build around,
yeah.
and it's like even though they're in Germany, thousands of miles away from Rome, they're like this is the new Roman Empire now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
And
just
well, I mean, there's a it's interesting. Every myth sort of all harkens back at some point to Troy. Troy is like one of the most important thing things in all of
yeah.
mythology.
Well, yeah, Homer is like the foundational
Yeah.
mythology of Western civilization.
Yeah. Like Aeneas, the Roman Odysseus, he went to he came from Troy,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So it's like, and that you can only found a new civilization on, it only has any meaning if you can trace it back to Troy, the war at Troy. And
Hmm.
and King Arthur, um I forget how it was, but they figured out a way to like make him from Troy too. And King Arthur
Oh
himself
wow.
is this ideal that they built,
Well,
they built Britain on.
yeah. Well, like the well, one of the defining characteristics of Troy is the fact that it was destroyed.
Yeah.
Like
It's a myth.
so,
It's a place of
yeah.
myth.
You can't you can't claim that you're the next Rome if Rome is still going strong.
Yeah, exactly.
Like so, like that's why it's so enticing as a foundational myth is like oh like oh this it's not a real place. It's an idealized kind of like this is a great civilization that is no longer around. So we can it's
And was
available for
super
us to
important. And
yeah,
yeah,
super important. So it's available for us to inherit it as a kind of
exactly.
thing.
And that's why another reason is if Rome is still around and Rome is your ideal, what if it falls? Then your entire like mythology is crumbled.
Hmm.
So if like your whole life is your car, and then one day and like everything, all of your ego is built on it, all of your money has gone into it. You drive it around town and you get girls with it. Like everything comes from this car. And then a tree falls on it one day.
Hmm.
It's like that's ego shattering for you. And it
Yeah, yeah.
would
Like you're
and that's why it needs to be set in something that's not real. Because if it is real and it gets taken away, then it can be destroyed. But
yeah,
Troy has
like
already
the
been destroyed. Yeah.
yeah, like you yeah, you your ideals need to be something a little bit more durable than a physical object or place. It needs to be an idea. Yeah, an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, an idea. Exactly. Well, there was one other last thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
And that's the very end of the Bike Riders. Do you remember the last shot of that?
Wasn't it
I
like
love last shots of movies. It's like one of
wasn't
my
wasn't it wasn't it like a I might be remembering Goodfellas, but wasn't it like a backyard with white picket fences, like kind of
hmm
suburban thing? Yeah, okay,
hmm
okay, good.
Yeah, but it was more complicated than that because it was so Benny's back,
Hmm.
but without Johnny, and he came back to be with his wife. He's working a regular job, and he has a regular life. And she's trying to convince the reporter he doesn't miss it at all. He doesn't miss his bike riding days at all. And then they show him sitting in the backyard, um, kind of daydreaming,
Hmm.
and there's motorcycle sounds happening. So you could, so
Oh.
he is thinking about it. That's all he's thinking about. And he misses his freedom, but it's sort of like the Western era where it's like we idolize it because it represented a time where people were truly free,
Hmm. But it can't
but
exist anymore.
but it can't exist anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah. And in a way, this episode can't exist anymore because it's gone on way too long.
Yeah.
And that was the Mythic Movie Maker podcast.